the one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 401 of Sports Card Nation. We celebrated our 400th episode last week with a giveaway, and we gave out a contest word on that episode, which you had to get to me in either PM, DM, or email fashion. I'm going to give it another week before we actually draw the randomized for the 6 prizes, the winners. Not everyone, I get it, not everyone listens to the episode on release day. We do have some entries for sure, but I want to give everyone ample time. I don't want anyone to say, hey, you did it too fast, or I'm busy, I don't listen to the episode on day one. So I'm going to give it probably to this coming Friday for everyone to get the entries in. If you're not in, how do you get in? Listen to episode 400. Somewhere in the episode, I will give you a hint, it's not at the beginning, there will be a contest word. Get that contest word to us, and you are entered. Everyone entered will be put on the randomizer list for one of 6 prizes. I don't want anyone winning more than once, so there'll be 6 different winners, and we'll do that in about a week. Let's talk about this episode. My guest on this show, Dave Schwartz from the Shallow End. He's kind of sunsetted that podcast, but he's doing other content as well. He's not riding off into the sunset. But great show. For one thing I appreciated about that show was for really the everyday collector, and wanted to talk to him about the thought process when he knew, as a fellow podcaster, what was the toughest thing about podcasting, what was the most fun, and that sort of thing. So I picked his brain to get some behind the scenes or some insights about him and the show. He's an alumnus of the show. He's been on prior, but with that happening recently, I wanted to get him on. So he's our guest this week and next week, as we do always continue to do double episodes to keep the time allotment more consumable. Before we get the show started, I want to thank all our great sponsors, some that contributed to the giveaway that was ongoing. SGC, Iron Sports Cards, Sports Collectors Digest, Hobby Hotline, Upper Deck, Card Ladder, and CTCA, the Certified Trading Card Association. So, with all that being said, let's kick this thing off.
Attention, Sports Card Nation viewers. What up, kids? It's your boy Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone. Oh, we're back. Ball is back. The hobby never ends. And before you know it, I'm going to be on your screen again, rocking that Octobox, knocking the bottom out of the witching hour, and announcing 7 hours of Red Zone football. But as you watch Red Zone, just save some time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to check out John and Sports Card Nation. Let's have a great season, people.
Real happy to have the next gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. It's not his first time. He is a returning guest, and he's a podcaster and content creator in his own right. And I'm happy to call him also a friend, and happy to have him back on. Dave Schwartz, welcome back.
Hey, John. It's great to be here. Great to be back. When I first got back into cards, you were one of the first people who I found, and you helped kind of bring me back to life in this hobby. So I love talking with you. It's great to be here.
Well, I appreciate that, and coming from you even all the more. So you're not out of podcasting per se, but you had a great show, The Shallow End, which I know you just sunsetted, 3-year run, or almost 3 years, 23 to 26 here. And one thing I loved about the show and your content was it was for everybody, the everyday collector. And it's something I try to do, frankly, and I'm being very honest here, I think you do a better job than I do, because sometimes I'll have a guest that's from the corporate world. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but you really made content that everyone could relate to and made it seem seamless. And so my hat's off to you there. When you started the Shallow End, was that something you had in mind right from Jump Street?
It was. In fact, that's even the story behind the name. So when I got going, I was asked if I wanted to do a podcast, and this was by, the artist formerly known as the Sports Card Therapist, right, Rob G. And he said, would you want to be on my network? He asked me, would you want to do a show? And immediately I came back with no. And the reason why is I had no immediate ideas. I'd done a podcast before in a different market. It was like it was about books, right? And don't like the sound of my own voice. But then as I thought about it and took about a week, I got back to him and I said, actually, yeah, let's give it a shot. He says, what do you want to be about? And I came back immediately, the Shallow End. Let's do a podcast about the rest of us, which is also the most of us, I think. The 7-figure sales are allegedly interesting, but really I think the ones we can all relate to and want to talk about are just the fun pickups. I love when I'm on Instagram or a social or somewhere and someone sends me a pic of, hey, look what I picked up, and it's for their PC and it costs them $12. Like that's almost more exciting than first round draft pick du jour, Prism Black finite vinyl 1 of 1 gold. We get it, right? But it's when somebody is working towards something and the cost of the card matters so much less than just being able to fit that into what they're trying to build.
Yeah, no doubt. And that upper echelon, if you will, the hobby, it does make headlines, but when you really, bear it out, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's really like 2% of the overall hobby, right? The other 98% are guys like us that are we collect what we love and like, or something that's nostalgic or brings back memories to maybe our younger days, if you will. And not that they don't, that 2% isn't the same, but the majority is playing with lesser discretionary income, if you will. Maybe that's the polite way to say it. And so, and I knew that, but like you said, with the name of the show itself to kind of drive that point home, when you decided to, kind of sunset the show, and you do another show called Overthinking Baseball Cards. So it's not like you're riding off into the sunset and we'll never see you again, which that's a good thing. But when you decided sort of to put, the Shallow End to bed, how much did you wrestle with that? Or was it actually easier than people may think?
No, that's a really good question. I had almost ended it about 6 months earlier. I almost ended it at the end of 25. I was just tired of it. I was tired of coming up with content. Work was really, really busy. And for the first time, it felt like something I had to do instead of something that I wanted to do. I had a conversation behind the scenes with a few people about it. And they said, take a break, don't quit. And I did. I took 3 or 4 weeks off and then came back and running. I was just reinvigorated. But then it started to hit me again, in the spring, like, okay, I think I've taken this about as far as I can take it. Not having a podcast, but that podcast in particular. And then I looked at it, realized, I did the math that I was coming up on 200 episodes. And I thought I was maybe 12 away. And I thought that'd be a really nice round number to say that the show lasts 200 episodes. And so I mapped it out and saw, about when that would end. And I think it was mid to late May. And I didn't want it to interfere with the National too much because it would get lost. And that timing just seemed perfect. And so I said, all right, I'm going to do that. But I didn't tell anybody until I was 5 weeks out. And then I put out that show saying, 5 more, and then I'm done. And no regrets. It's only been 7 weeks since I ended it. But I'm glad that I did. I do the Overthinking Baseball Card show with Jason, who's at Contrarian Cards. And that's about once a month, which is a nice pace. And this past week or two, I also started one called Sports Cards, the Cardcast, with Pat, who is Insta account haver. And one thing I like about it is it's nice to have someone to chat with who we have like interests and like philosophies and like trains of thought, but also we don't need to do it all that often, maybe once a week. I'm sorry, once a month, once every few weeks or so. Because this isn't my job. I have a job, and I have a long commute and kids and everything else. And so this way I don't resent it so much. Plus I get to scratch another itch. So, Jason and I get to go really deep into conversations on overthinking baseball cards, and Pat and I get to have a little fun on sports cards, the Cardcast. And it's just a little bit different, and it's different, and it's new, and it feels exciting to me, and it's a little bit less frequent. So every time feels fresh and fun.
Yeah, and that's good to hear, that you're in a good place, right? And when I first, even doing this podcast, Dave, and I've talked about this on this podcast before, and I'll make this story a lot shorter. When I was in the episodes in the numbers in the 50s and 60s, I really was getting sort of time consumed by it. And again, I told the story before, so I apologize for those that have heard it. But I came, I'm upstairs. This is where I do the recording. This is all my cards are around me. And I came down one night, and my wife said, "Hi, my name is Sharon. What's your name?" And it was her polite way of saying, like, "Man, you are upstairs a lot. What's going on?" And sometimes you need something like that to hit. You don't even realize that, right? You don't even realize it until someone. It's almost, I hate to use this analogy, but it's almost like intervention, right? Where you don't know there's an issue until someone else says, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on? Why are you doing it?" And I was just very consumed by it and just into it, and it just a lot of time, and it was taking me away from other things. And that line from my wife really opened my eyes to, hey, I know I enjoy it. Obviously, I'm spending all this time on it, right? You got to enjoy it if you're doing that, spending that much time on it. But how can I still do it? And maybe be more efficient at it with time and there were some things that I didn't know. I was sort of early. I'm still learning, Dave. But there was things I didn't know at that time that I know now that I did a little research. How do I edit and do it fast? And all those things. And, again, I'll make the story shorter. And I started implementing some of those things and really got back to where, baseline where I should have been. And I think I'm better for it. Obviously, my family part of my life is better for it. But I also, because I don't spend the same amount of time like that, I think I appreciate it more too. That's, burnout is a term that can be applied to anything, a job, a family, podcast, whatever, playing sports or a certain sport. You can get burnout can apply to any of those things. And I think had I continued down that road, I was headed in that direction. And sometimes it takes someone else to say, "Hey, what's going on?" And to kind of turn the light on for you. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm glad, I'm glad my wife had said something. So here we are, almost at 400 episodes, which is nuts to me as well. Like you probably, when you started, I had no idea how long it was going to last, how long, when we even started, we didn't even have guests. It was just me, which is now what the other show I do, Hobby Quick Kits, has become, where it's just me. So, I get it. That hits home to me as well. So I also, when I started this show, I wasn't in teaching like I am now, Dave. And I had a job that was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Literally. I'm not even people in bed. That's my hours. And it was just killing me. And I needed a career. And then doing the podcast on top of that, that's where some of the commentary from my wife came. Now I have now I'm more 8 to 3 o'clock, and I just better off for it and anything else. The other thing I wanted to ask you, not enough about me, but did podcasting change how you collected? Did it influence how you collected, or not necessarily?
No, I think I would have evolved anyway. But what it did change is my overall experience in the hobby, and that allowed me to meet some people, which was really important. When my collecting hiatus was over, I used to say I was out of the hobby, but then Mike Moynihan always says, as long as you have cards, you're never out of the hobby. You just take a long hiatus. So when my decades long hiatus was over and I came back, at first I just learned about it through podcasts and how kind of what I was doing, what the different sets were, and how the business was run now, and what's this grading thing. And then from there, I moved into Twitter, actually. I wasn't even on Instagram yet. And I started selling over and buying and selling over Twitter for a while, low end type stuff. And that place turned into a cesspool pretty quick. And so I just deleted my account and moved on from it. And this is when it was still Twitter. And then, but I felt really lonely. And there's something that happens with men as they get older in that they tend to isolate a lot. They tend to kind of just go into the shell and become loners. And I felt that happening a little bit. And so I joined Instagram and tried to meet some people, and it was great. I chatted with some of their folks here and there. And then when the podcast opportunity came, at first I thought no, but then I thought maybe this is another way to reach out and make some connections. The cards were always there, and we're always evolving in what we like and how we do it. Sometimes we evolve fast, and sometimes it's a long time to evolve. But what I appreciate most about the Shallow End podcast while it was going is because of that. Now I've got people who I know and friends who, whether the podcast is going or not, that we have this connections now. And I feel a little bit more part of the world in a way. And I think I can thank podcasting for that.
Yeah, I concur 100%, right? It's funny because, it's funny, the Nationals coming up and it never fails. And I'm always humbled by it, right? I'm just walking around trying to buy some cards and see friends that I know, but someone will like tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, John, like, you don't know me, love the show, just wanted to shake your hand." And like, I'm always amazed by that. Like, I had one guy say, like, "You're a celebrity." I'm like, I'm not. And I've said this on the show, like, until I go to my local supermarket and I'm grocery shopping and someone says, "Oh my God, it's you," which doesn't happen. And that's my point. I'm not a celebrity, but it always is humbling. I'm flattered by it. I'm honored by it. But I always tell when someone says that to me, I'm like, I put my pants on one leg at a time, man. We're in the same fraternity of card collecting. That's who we are. And I'm good with that. But I'm always appreciative of people who, are glad to meet me, right? Beats the alternative, the other side of that coin. But that was never like really a goal of mine. I just wanted to share my experiences, my hobby, ask questions, and also maybe be informative at the same time, right? I always say, as long as you're in the hobby, you're probably learning something every day, especially now in today's hobby where it changes so quickly and there's something new around the corner. It seems like every week. So I'm always learning, and I'm just really, appreciative of, like you said, where the podcast has went and what what has happened because of it. Having that fraternity of friends, and that's gotten bigger over the course of 8 years, obviously, and including yourself, right? And getting to know you and talking with you at the show and that sort of thing, or not at the show, like we are now, or even off air, if you will. And you can't put a price on stuff like that. Again, you're still doing content. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. Do you think, could you bring the Shallow End back at some point? Maybe, after a hiatus, if you will, maybe you'll say, "Hey, I want to do this again, do this podcast again."
I could. It would not be a weekly show anymore. Again, I don't want to have the obligation. So much of what you do when you put out content is you want to be consistent, right? You know that. You want to be there. You don't want to have people come to enjoy your show and give you their time, which is the most precious thing, right? You can make more money, you can work out and get healthier, but you can't make more time. So when they are giving you their time, you want to be there. But at the same time, I would probably want to do it maybe, I'd say, hey, the second Thursday of every month or something along those lines if I did it. And in my last episode, I referenced, I'm not saying I'm anywhere near her level, but I was talking about Oprah, right? So Oprah had her show for 15, 20 years, however long it was. And then she ended it.
Cut you off, Dave. I do like you more than Oprah. Not that I don't
thank you.
like Oprah, but I do.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. But then she ended her show. But then all of a sudden, randomly, 6 months later, there was like the Oprah special where she did an interview with someone, and she just felt like she wanted to do it again. And so what I've thought about is if the shallow end does come back, it wouldn't be called the shallow end. It would be called like the shallow end interviews or something, right? Where just once a month I reach out to someone and hope they want to talk to me because they're interesting, and then I can bring their perspective to the overall hobby. But as of right now, I've got no intention of bringing it back as a weekly show anytime soon, or maybe ever.
I had to ask, and I'm sort of politicking for like, hey, just keep that in your back pocket if you ever want to, bring it back. But that's true. You can bring it back, like you said, even in a different form if that's the case, right? It's still you, right? At the helm and behind the mic, if that's what you choose to do.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
When you're dealing with sports cards, guessing isn't a strategy. A strategy requires relying on accurate data that you can trust. That's why the hobby uses Card Ladder. Card Ladder provides hundreds of millions of historical prices going back over 20 years, plus real-time tracking of comps from across the hobby as they happen. We track sales from every major platform while working together with marketplaces and grading companies to provide the most reliable data in the industry. Card Ladder's research team carefully vets millions of transactions. We provide dozens of category indexes and thousands of player indexes to help you get a big picture view of the market. With Card Ladder, you can look up prices for any card in any grade, track and manage your collection in real time, and study industry-wide metrics, all to enhance your collecting experience. Ready to level up your hobby? Go to cardladder.com right now. Tap Try It for free or get started today.
We are back.
I got to ask you this because I want to sort of compare notes. It doesn't mean that you don't enjoy it, but what was like your least favorite thing about doing the podcast? And I'll even add mine after I hear. It might even be the same for all I don't know your answer.
For me, it was post-production. So the way that I would do it is I except for when I did the essays, I wrote those out. But for the most part, I would script my intro 30 seconds to say what the show is about, and then I would just talk with some notes. I'd have my notes and I would just kind of go. But then when it was over, I would have to go back and listen to it so I could edit it and put everything together, like the theme song and the transition sounds. But then I had to do it a third time, in which I would listen to it in my car on the way to or from work to make sure it all sounded good. So essentially, I felt like I was doing it 3 times. And I was so tired of it by the end. I generally don't like the sound of my voice. It's fine. I've gotten past, like, whatever, I deal with it. But to hear the same episode with your same voice 3 times, it was just too much. But I didn't want to scale back because then the level of quality might go down, right? So step 1 was record it. Step 2 was edit it. And step 3 was make sure it's all there. And there was 2 times, I think, where I didn't do that because I was just in a hurry. One time turned out fine. The other time I uploaded the wrong file. And so it was an outtake. Excuse me. It was an outtake where I had to stop and restart. But you hear me pausing. You hear me clearing my throat. You hear me swearing. I'm like, oh, shit, like that. And I have to start over. And that went up for about 45 minutes until I hit play the morning it came out to listen to it. I thought, what did I, oh God, and I went back and I jumped onto the, to the backend system and I pulled it down and I put up the correct one. But the one time, one of the few times I didn't do it, that's what happens. And that's why I was so dedicated to the back end as much as I was to the front end. And so that was by far my least favorite part. I'm so appreciative of you asking me here because it's so much fun to talk, but I also like being a guest on someone's show because when I'm off, I'm done, right? I can just go off and do something else. I don't have to think about the uploading, the editing, the sound quality, all of that stuff. And so I just I don't miss that. That's what took the most time, in fact. And so that's where I got most of my time back.
You stole my answer, but I think for obvious reasons, it's both of our answers. And to make you feel better, Dave, I've done stuff like that too, where probably more than once, but someone said, hey man, you ran like there was an ad that ran twice, or something happened where like it shouldn't have been in that episode. Like you said, it didn't flow. I uploaded the wrong file, much like you said,
Mhm.
and it actually went to air. Like I didn't catch it myself.
Yeah, I got it.
It was
Same thing.
it was
Mhm.
out. It was out there. I'm not gonna lie about it. It was out there for the masses to intake. And frankly, if no one would have said anything, I might have caught it when I listened to it, but I don't always listen to it the same day I release it necessarily. So, but someone messaged me probably 2 to 3 hours at like early in the morning after I released it. And like, John, did you know this? Like, I don't think you do, obviously, or you wouldn't have. And I pulled like you said, that brought back memories. I actually took it down that way no one had to hear the mistake. Fixed the episode and re-uploaded. I think
Yep.
I even put like in my intro, like, hey, sorry that this is coming out late. For those that didn't even hear the initial episode, sorry this has come out late. I'm very transparent, so I don't want to act like, hey, it didn't happen. You know, like it was out there. Like, my bad. I fixed it. That's why this part is a little bit later. For those who are looking for it earlier and didn't see it, or that gap when I took the first file down and then fixed it and whatnot. I've had people say that's one of the things they like is I try to be transparent and honest and genuine and like, hey, we're human, right? We make mistakes, right? That's the beauty of being a human. And but like you said, Dave, you took the words right out of my mouth, right? The post. Like, this stuff is fun. Me talking to you and whoever the guest is on whatever particular episode. That's always the fun part. But it's that post-production and editing. And it takes me less time now because some of those tools I've implemented. But it's still, truth be told, like you just said, it's my least favorite part as well. And it's funny. I'm sure you still get them. I still get them. I get an email. Hey, we can do all the editing and post-production for your podcast. Obviously it's not for free, and
Right.
I'm like, who do you think I am, Joe Rogan? Like, we're not doing the show for financial gain. There is some, again, being transparent. I do have sponsors and whatnot, but I can't pay like someone to do all the post production and editing. I'm not at that level. That's like a Joe Rogan. To me, that's like a Joe Rogan level. But I always get a kick out of when sometimes I just delete them. Other times, if I'm in a playful sort of mood, I'll just play along and like, hey, what does this entail, and what does what does this cost? And the amount, like $200 an episode. I'm like, what? Who do you think I am? So, but it's always funny, and I still get those at least once a week, if not more. But I wish someone would do it for free. I'm all about that. But even then, it's funny. After saying that, I don't know if I'd even do that, right? Because like, you got to trust somebody that they're going to do what you would want to do, right? And so doing it yourself, right? You put those personal touches on there. But at the same time, I wish I was like, in Bewitched, where I could just wiggle my nose and it would just all be done. No such luck though. That was just a TV show, but I get it. And right. And I venture a guess like the most fun is, like I just said, talking to folks or sharing your thoughts and that sort of.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? It's like, as a kid collecting, you'd ride your bike to the 7-Eleven or whatever your store was, wherever you were, and you buy a few packs for cheap. You buy a Slurpee or soda or something, and you go back and you'd all just open up your cards and talk about them and just trade each other or get jealous because someone else happened to pull an Ozzie Smith or a Don Mattingly or something like that. And then we would trade, and it was fun. And that's kind of what we've got to do now, because as adults, we have different responsibilities and a lot of our physical friends, by that I mean like people who are, in our neighborhood, but they don't collect. Right. And so the way to talk about cards is this. And I think talking about cards is so much fun, man. I like it. It's part of the collecting. Like, to me, the collecting part is finding what you like, acquiring what you like, building a collection that you like, but then talking about it as well with your buddies. And I wouldn't change that for the world.
Yeah, no doubt. That's why I always say, right, we're in the, we might all go to like different colleges per se with different ways we collect, but we're all in the same fraternity at the end. I wanted to get your take on this too. I know a lot of people like to appoint themselves like hobby watchdogs or gatekeepers. The more polite term is watchdog, or a derogatory one. And I've always said, Dave, like we're all hobby watchdogs. We should all be out helping each other out, right? I don't think you need to self-appoint yourself that, or I'm this and you're not, right? We all should be looking out for everyone's well-being in the hobby, right? Because I like people in the hobby. I don't want someone to have a bad experience, get burnt, or be unhappy about something and leave, right? And when someone new comes in the hobby, I want them to stay for the long haul, much like I did, starting in 1979. So I always say, like, we're all hobby watchdogs. We don't need to put a title on it. You don't need to, like, appoint yourself that. And sometimes it would bother me when someone would say, I'm the hobby watchdog. And, it always sort of, I'm like, we all are. And I don't even like have to say it, but we all should like be thinking like, hey, we all need to look out for one another. If I can tell you something, Dave, that's going to help you or prevent you from going down a road that maybe doesn't end well, like why wouldn't I share that info or try to help you out? I don't need to put a title on that. It's just information. Was that something you're cognizant, or am I just being nitpicky, which I can be sometimes?
Yeah, I don't know. It was never really my intention, but I like the way that you put it, and from the perspective that you're coming, and that whether we want to or not, we're all sort of a hobby watchdog as long as our intentions are good. But that's never how I approached it. What I want to do is I approached it from one, putting out the kind of content that I would want to listen to. And the second one was but actually being there as a collector who has a show. So when the noise got to be too much, you could always retreat to my show to get back to your roots of what collecting is. Most of my 200 episodes, probably 196 of them, you could listen to now, and you wouldn't know if it came out 3 years ago or today, because they were essentially, for the most part, evergreen. So I would say no, I was not a watchdog. I was more like a safe haven of places where people could return. I was like the old inn with the fireplace, come in and put up your feet and have someone can get you some soup and you can warm up and remember, like, oh, okay, this is all I needed right here. I didn't need all the invest in this, or here's the scandal of the day, and oh my gosh, can you believe it? SGC was sold, and now where's Peter? And now they shrunk, and now they got spot. Oh God, who cares? Right? I just want to get back to the cards, and so I just tried to be that warm chair with the fireplace next to it.
Well, listen, I'll tell you this: as someone who listened to your show, you you nailed it. You did a great job, and when I realized, like, hey, you're kind of ending that, I was like, no, like I really didn't want to, but doing this, but at the same time, Dave, I'll give you doing this. I also understood it too, because from my own thoughts and internal process, I got it. So I didn't want to be, I know I reached out to you, but I didn't want to, from a selfish point of view, say, oh, you can't do this, or because I'm like, I wanted you to know I enjoyed your content. I'm sad, but I also didn't, I think it's a little, like, don't do it. Like, you don't know what someone's dealing with right behind the scenes. Maybe it's something you didn't even share. Maybe it's, God forbid, but like something you just didn't want to share. And then this is just part of that process. So I never really do that, but you know what I mean? But I get it. And I know we talked about it, and then I wanted you to, I would have you on anyway, but it's not just because you ended that show, but to talk about it and because we kind of share. Obviously we both know what, this entails, and sometimes those internal battles you have with yourself, right? We all have them. I don't care who you are, right? You, me, Jeremy Lee, whoever it is, right? It can be time consuming, and it's a commitment, right? Especially if you're doing it like this show, which is every week. So I fully get it. When you look at the current state of the hobby, we got Fanatics taking 3/4 of the licensing. We've heard Ruben say, and I know you don't this isn't particularly your lane, but you're a smart guy, so I wanted to pick your brain here, right? And you got your finger on the pulse enough where you can answer we see Fanatics, with most of the licensing now, with the exception of hockey, of the four major sports. We see what's happening in the grading space with delays and lower pricing levels sort of being paused and or eliminated. Michael Rubin, hey, we want to 10x the hobby. When you see all this, you hear like, what's your view on, like, even though it may not affect you by the way you collect, what are your feelings to, where the hobby is?
It's a good question. I never talked about it on my show, but I always paid attention to know what's going on. And I have opinions and thoughts. And I think what I think about most now is I hope that collectors are able to get what they want and get what they need and are able to focus on what they want to focus on. The question that burns in my mind often is what is the hobby now? Is the hobby collecting cards, or is there a separate hobby in which the hobby is investing and making returns on cards as quickly as you can, and sports cards just happen to be the vehicle for that? And it could be stamps, and it could be watches or shoes or furniture or anything else. How will someone getting into the hobby today, a kid, look back at it in the year 2070? Will they look back at their hobby as I think a lot of them will. We're like, oh, I got to collect my favorite players, like like Trevor Lawrence or whoever, any other athlete playing now, like Jordan Walker. Or will it be, it's like, oh, that was a great summer back in 26. I made 14K. So like, really, what is the hobby now? I don't think that the hobby is dying. I just think that there are two hobbies occupying the same space. And one hobby is card collecting, and the other one is making money with cards. And it's really interesting trying to watch those two work in tandem with each other. It's like the Ghostbusters don't cross the streams, but they've been crossed. And it affects collectors in that it jacks up prices on them, but it also affects investors because who controls some of the card? But we have to learn to all swim in the same sea together. So I don't necessarily mind all the business stuff. I don't know who owned Topps before Fanatics. I just thought there was some specter up in the air that owned it. I have no idea. And now we know that it's Mike Mahan and Rubin above him, and they're doing fine. They have too many parallels, and they probably overprint, but that's just my preference. In terms of the grading, I know they changed it about a year and a half ago. Not Mahan. One of them. No, that's the wrong group. The president of PSA, not collectors, not Nat, but the PSA person.
Nat Turner.
Yeah, but the person
Nat
below
Turner?
the PSA specifically.
Right, I know who you're talking about. His name is it's I can't think of it, but I know.
Right. He's Mantle Maze on Instagram. I know that Maze Mantle on Instagram. And Nat was saying, "Oh no, our grading didn't change. We're just adhering to our standards more." And 2 seconds later,
Ryan Hosch.
Right. And an hour and a half later,
I give him proper credit, like rather than just say that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thanks. Right. So Nat Turner goes, our standards haven't changed. We're just enforcing them better. And Ryan Hoge comes in and goes, here's how our standards have changed. And like, wait, what's even going on here? But I'm all for a 10 being really hard to get. A 10 should be really, really, really hard to get. What's jamming everything up, though, is like everyone else knows, it's TCG and it's Pokemon, and it's not sports cards at all. And from what I've read and looked at myself, the number of sports cards that are graded now are identical to the number that are being graded a year ago. But the number of cards overall have gone up so much that it's got to come from somewhere. And so it's TCG, and that just sort of is what it is. I've heard some people say they should separate it out and have a separate company or a separate area for TCG to be graded. But where does that stop? Because if you do that, then the football collectors are going to say, well, how about we separate baseball because there's too much of that? And then basketball will say, well, let's put football because there's too much of that. And then hockey will say, now there's too much of that. So it is what it is. They're all trading cards. Some people like Pokemon, which is great. Some like TCG, some like Magic the Gathering, some like hockey, some like football, some like baseball. There's just a lot going on right now, and the infrastructure hasn't caught up yet. The hobby has been grown, but the hobby industrial complex did not grow with it, and now we're dealing with the backlog.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good way of putting it, right? It's like the hobby's grown, but like you said, the internal functions have had a hard time keeping up with that growth. And I also like the C analogy, right? It's a big C, right? You can be in your own section, if you will. There's, like we know in real life, right? There's all different seas: the Atlantic, Pacific Ocean, Mediterranean, Black, right? So whatever your C is, right, you can be in there with folks that are of similar ilk and ways they collect. And that's, I guess, at the end of the day, that's the beauty of the hobby. That concludes part 1 of my conversation with Dave Schwartz from the Shallow End. And Dave's just a great down-to-earth guy. I gravitate towards folks like that because I try to be like that, or I feel like I'm like that. So come back next week for part 2. And again, Dave is still producing content. He just sunsetted the Shallow End. And next week, I think we're going to get more into even the reasons why. So stay tuned for that.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
Sup everyone, it's Brody the Kid. Always remember, the hobby is the people. Peace out.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.